What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Struggle to Strength podcast, your source for real life application on how to turn your struggles into strengths in all things mind, muscle, and money. Today, we have a super exciting episode for you. We have Micah Logan, who is the founder and CEO of MELD Fitness and Wellness and CEO of HushFrame. Very successful entrepreneur and a very young individual, super intelligent, came from very little and has built his empire into something that's just very impressive. So Travis and I today, we just have a really open and honest, vulnerable conversation about how to scale business. This is a phenomenal episode for anybody going through an entrepreneurial journey, how to succeed, how to find happiness, and a lot of really valuable outcomes. Micah is an incredible human that we've been able to keep in touch with, and I highly recommend you all do too. So stay tuned. If you are an entrepreneur looking to scale your business, this is an incredibly valuable episode for you. So stay tuned, and we will see you guys inside. So I'd love to dive in. And before we do, I think the best course of action would just be to give our listeners a little bit of a background of who you are, what you've done, and why you're here today.
Sounds good.
All right, let's dive in, man. You want to just give yourself a little quick intro?
Yeah. So my name is Micah Logan. I'm the founder, CEO of MELD Fitness and Wellness. And I'm also the CEO of a company called HushFrame, which is, I'll go back to MELD Fitness and Wellness, which is MELD Fitness and Wellness is a concept I created. It's a boutique fitness concept. It focuses on personal training. It addresses the 30 to 55-year-old market. And if you know anything about fitness, or even just a little bit, you know that there's not really a brand out there that speaks to 30 to 55-year-olds. You have a lot of concepts that appeal to people who are like 25 and under. You have some aging concepts, all women concepts. But what about the busy professionals who have very little limited time, are on their second raise, are bumping up against their first issue, and need a workout that's effective for them, customized for them, and a place where they can actually see other professional 30 to 55-year-olds. That's not Tinder, by the way. Right? Like, they can just talk. So what we came up with was MELD Fitness and Wellness, and we provide personal training in small groups of up to 4 members to 1 fitness coach. And included in our concept is a smoothie bar, in addition to the small group personal training that a franchisee or owner of MELD can leverage into like a nice solid business. The most interesting part of the concept, though, is that all of that takes place in 1,000 square feet. So I took a really Eurocentric model in terms of size, scale, and efficiency to the studio, because there's so many overbuilt fitness concepts out there that you don't really need to be overbuilt in order to have a really good, profitable fitness service model like personal training. You just have to have a good model and offering that people want. And within that 1,000 square feet, we're talking about personal training, smoothie bar. We're talking about retail, like supplement sales and other things that you can retail in there, all in 1,000 square feet. So that's the first thing that I'm running right now. We're trying to expand across the country. We have franchise candidates in our pipeline. And I'm hoping by the end of the year, we have units in various areas of the U.S. And then on the flip side, I'm also the CEO of a company called HushFrame. They manufacture these funny little things right here. This is exactly what you think it is. It's 2 pieces of wood and silicone. And what these things are these are soundproofing devices. So these get attached to wood studs or metal studs in walls, or floor joist in ceilings, right? And then you attach a piece of furring to the front of it. And then you attach the drywall to the piece of furring. And what they do is they decouple a wall from the structure of the house, like the stud, or they decouple a ceiling from the floor assembly above. And so it creates basically a floating room within a room. And noise is basically all energy. So as noise is produced, it typically smashes the wall, right? Where the drywall is, it travels down the face of the drywall, and that vibrational energy goes into whatever point is connected to another point of entry on the other side. So how this works is, as the vibration hits that drywall, travels through that drywall into the stud, into the face of this. As it's traveling through, it gets bogged down in this little core silicone right here, converted into heat, and basically killed. There's it's called the viscous drag method of absorption, that process. And it prevents sound from traveling from one area to the other. And there's nothing on the market right now that works in wood frame construction but HushFrame. This is the most disruptive piece of soundproofing technology, and just two pieces of wood and silicone in the last 20 plus years in the construction industry. So it's a startup, but would that be disruptive.
Would that be to like cut noise down? So let's say you're building a building in a city and you don't want to disturb everyone around. Would that be like just for cutting down like the actual construction noise? Like, you know, when you're sawing, you hit something when you're sawing or drilling or whatever, and it's like so loud. Is that to like cut down that stuff, or is it to also cut down like the noise of once it's built, like someone talking in one apartment and being able to like clearly hear them in another apartment?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So let's address that. So this is a product that goes into like a rough construction, right? So this would go attached to studs or the floor joist, as I mentioned, and then you would finish the walls of the floor ceilings around it. So this is actually the net benefit of this is post-construction, when the walls are in and the ceiling is in, to prevent that transfer of noise. But interesting what you said about the different kinds of noise, because there's two different kinds of noise that have to be addressed. There's a noise called impact noise, and then there's another noise, airborne noise, that's measured in a different way. So these two different forms of noises are measured differently. So impact noise is measured in a rating called IIC, and airborne noise, which is like you playing the guitar and then you hearing the guitar in the next room, is measured in what's called STC. And HushFrame is a unique device, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, in floor ceilings, it literally has been tested off the charts in the field and labs with IIC, impact noise, and STC, airborne noise, right? But here's where it gets pretty sweet. We also just got issued do you know the certification, the UL certification on products? Have you ever seen that? That's basically an underwriter's laboratory. One of the things they measure is fire rating or fire resistance, right? And all construction materials have to have a fire rating. And so what we've done in HushFrame is, normally in multi-unit buildings, they have to pour like a layer of concrete in order to achieve a 1 hour fire rating. Why is a 1 hour fire rating important? Escapability, right? If the building's on fire, you want people to be able to get out. So you have to have resistance for like an hour, a minimum of an hour. HushFrame has eliminated the need to pour that extra building material, concrete, on the floors, because we've recently passed a test using fully wood and these devices where we got that 1 hour fire rating without that like concrete topping. It's huge.
Because of silicone, right?
I think, yes. Well, yes. Yeah, good point. The
silicone's like super heat resistant. So
I think don't hold me to this, but I think that the heating resistance of silicone is like maybe 1,000 degrees, maybe slightly more. It's very high. It's very high.
Sounds right.
And so because of the dovetails associated with it and how the silicone goes into the wood, I'm sure it has some resistance properties when you combine the two materials. So
cool.
Dude, that's a fascinating piece of equipment that you've designed there.
Yeah, I didn't design it. They brought me in as the CEO. They meaning the founders. So one of the founders invented it. He's been in construction for 40 years, and because of my acumen with fitness in the fitness business, and they know that I'm a business guy. I was advising them for a period of time, giving them suggestions and helping them with a few things in their business. And one of the things we uncovered was that, hey, look, you need a CEO, and they were like, so about that. And I was like, yeah, about that. I don't know. I don't have time for it. But then I was like, yeah, fine. I'll do it. I'm not doing enough, apparently. So, I decided to come on board, and I've been with them for about a couple of years, and it's been fun. It's a startup, and we've made some good hay, and we've created a lot of good distribution partnerships, and we have a lot of stuff in play right now.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's like an interesting point too, because like where Josh's brain went, that's where my brain went. I think most people, when you're looking at like an entrepreneurial journey, I think most people would assume that if someone's a CEO of a company, that especially like a startup, like you said, that they invented the thing, or that they like started the company, but in your circumstance, it was someone who had already started it that actually needed a CEO to bring you in, which is interesting. It's like, yeah, it doesn't always like work this, the same way. You can get involved in something if you have like the experience as a CEO.
Yeah. The highest levels of, the C-suite, it's very much like the NBA or the NFL, right? CEOs go from T-Mobile to, Burger King to another company that has a different service or offering. And, the CEO will come in, change the corporate culture. You see this all the time. CEOs get replaced in 3 to 5 years, and then they become the CEO of another company. Right. And oftentimes you could bring in someone as leadership because they have a certain definable set of skills. Right. And they have, and maybe the board of directors wants the company to go in a certain direction. And maybe this person is a good strategic fit for that direction, but that direction is only going to last for 3 to 5 years. And they're trying to, make those revenue targets. And so CEOs at the highest level get traded and they go to these companies all the time. Well, they don't get traded necessarily, but they come in, they're in for 3 to 5 years, and then they go and they build something different, right? At a different company. People don't see that oftentimes, but it's rare to have a CEO in place with a big company that lasts for 2 decades, something like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept that, you're fit for the part until you get to the goal or in the direction that the company wants to go in. And then we need new eyes. We need a new strategy. We need a new individual. I'm really curious about when you got brought into HushFrame and where the company was at that point. Like, I think myself and a lot of listeners would benefit from learning about the process that you guys went through, from the development, from the idea to the development to the R&D to getting patents to all that whole process. When exactly did you come into that process?
So I came into it after the patent was issued.
Okay.
And the patent was issued. There were trademarks that were already registered. And I came in during what they needed was, the growth phase, the growth of sales, the structure of the business. Typically the CEO of a company is a leader who organizes the business, uses his strategic relationships to grow the business. He helps with the strategic long-term vision. Some of that may be already mapped out, and then he comes in and adds his own input into that strategic vision to accomplish that goal. And when it came to HushFrame, they had started the process something approximating 6 years before I was brought in, like going through R&D and different iterations and variations of, the HushFrame raft. Obviously, how it looks now is different than how it looked when it was first invented. They were going through the R&D process. It was metal, it was variations of metal, and then it was variations of wood. And then now it landed on this, like many products landed on what is actually being sold now. And then after that, once they landed on the product that actually worked, that then had to be tested, which cost thousands of dollars to go into an acoustic lab. Well, and the thing is, to go into a laboratory to do testing for a product, depending on what the test is and who the laboratory is, if you want to go to a reputable one where you're not going to have to argue with someone about the results because the credentialing behind the person who did it, then you want to go to a reputable one, and that costs a lot of money, right? So the founding team is a husband and wife team, which is an even better story. It was invented in the garage. And, she was an executive at State Street Corporation. And, she was really able to put, a lot of fuel behind her husband, Alan, who invented this, the fire behind it, right? Because she had the resources because of her position, and she was able to do it. And so that led to kind of being able to get those tests done and to be able to, travel to do the R&D. And then it got to the process where, again, I'm in fitness, she's my client and a friend, and we're talking about this and we're working out. And every time we're working out, we're talking about the company and how that worked and all the other stuff. And, I've always maintained a few private clients because I just love coaching, in addition to running the businesses. Right. So then one day I was like, look, let's just not work out. Let's go to sit down and talk about your business. Right. And they have been trying to grow. They have been trying to, develop some relationships, and the website looked terrible. There was a whole bunch of stuff wrong. And so I just sat down and asked a bunch of questions. So I had my notepad and I was just like, What do you think about this? Who's the market? What does it mean? I asked about, how many of these rafts would you say the average like apartment needs? And I'm like, well, what is the average apartment size? And then, okay, if we're going to take the average apartment size, how many average rafts would need? It's like some of those questions to try to figure out the economics of scale in the business. How many do we need to sell in order to get to where you want to go? And before we do that, how do we even address the issues of being able to get in front of people who could push this product, right? So, that was a process that we kind of went through. And then after that, and once we kind of uncovered all of this stuff, we uncovered that some of their strategy was kind of all over the place. And so we talked about bringing it all together and like refining that process. And a lot of that came under the direction of someone who could take this, distill it, and then put it into a capsule and kind of move the company forward. That's the CEO. That was a net result of it. And that's kind of where we ended up with me coming in.
What is a CEO? What does a CEO do?
It depends on the size of the company. CEOs are a term that can be a dime a dozen nowadays. You go on LinkedIn and everyone's a CEO. Obviously, it stands for Chief Executive Officer. Typically, a person, oftentimes people call themselves a CEO when they're the only person working for a business.
Right.
Typically, the reason why CEO is called the CEO because there are other officers in the company with titles. And so you want to identify the person who's responsible for steering the ship and the strategic vision of the company. And so CEOs typically help formulate the company's long-term strategic plans or short-term strategic plans. They help make adjustments on the fly. In HushFrame, what we do a lot of, the leadership team is very collaborative. So we do a lot of talking about marketing initiatives and kind of how we want to represent ourselves in the public sphere. I lend my expertise to that. When you're a startup CEO, like is the case with myself and HushFrame, you're wearing more hats than you will when the company is more mature. When the company is more mature, then your role is a lot different, right? You can really focus in on the strategy piece more so than the operational and strategy piece, and including yourself in some of the deliverable pieces like generating marketing campaigns and improving them and all that stuff, right? So that's all involved when you're a startup CEO. When you're a CEO of T-Mobile, you're spending your time more with the strategy side and kind of really working with the other C-suite executives on making sure that the company is trending in the direction that your initiatives have promised that the company can generate revenue and profit for their shareholders.
I'm laughing because I'm like, while you're going through this and, talking about, in startup culture, a lot of CEOs, we wear a lot of hats. I'm like, yep, that sounds about right. That's kind of where I'm at. I think that's where Travis is kind of at, where we're doing the marketing, we're doing the strategic planning, we're doing the content creation, we're doing everything. And as we grow, our roles become kind of more and more refined. Something that I thought was interesting that you kind of discussed earlier was how when you joined the founders of HushFrame, they had a product and they were kind of missing some key pieces. And I think that a lot of people who start companies, myself and Travis probably included, we start companies, we start working in the business, and then that's what we're doing. And we miss a lot of those key pieces. What do you think the most commonly missed components of developing systems and processes and business strategy? What do you think those are for people who are starting their own business from the get-go?
Well, systems and processes are typically evolved from understanding how you want to deliver your company to the consumer. And what I mean by that is that we all have a brand promise, or you should, or a value proposition, meaning I'm assuming that your audiences are people who are fledgling entrepreneurs, like newer.
Yeah. Mostly fitness professionals or fitness enthusiasts or growing entrepreneurs, self-help enthusiasts, things like that.
Sure. Okay. So the thing about value proposition is knowing what you're essentially what your company offers the marketplace that no one else does, how you stand above. And your brand promise is how you deliver on that value proposition. Value proposition is knowing how you stand above, knowing what makes you different. Brand promise is how you deliver on it. So systems and processes help back up your brand promise. If you say, like in MELD, the fitness and wellness studio, we say that we work with members 30 to 55. Our value proposition is that we help busy adults to overcome the challenges of getting started and maintaining a healthy lifestyle, despite having busy lives, new families, and bumping against those brand new ailments between 30 to 55. And so how do we deliver in our brand promises that we're like the Cheers of gyms, right? We help deliver this in an engaging small group personal training environment that is also holds them accountable. Our accountability program is super high. So, that is a unique aspect to kind of how we deliver it, how we back up that brand promise. Now, our systems and processes back up that brand promise. How do we deliver on the accountability? How do we deliver on our brand promise that we're going to get these 30 to 55-year-olds in shape? Like, I can't build a system for a 20-year-old and say that we're serving 30 to 55. I have to meet our clients or our members where they are. So our systems and processes are built on that, built on enforcing those brand promises. As an example, we talk about we're going to hold them accountable. We assess our members every 4 weeks. That's one of our systems. They come in, they have an initial assessment every 4 weeks that we assess them. I basically got the idea for that model, not necessarily from the fitness industry, but from a buddy of mine who runs a real estate fund. And I asked him, I said, well, how do you show an ROI to your investors? Like, what do you do? And he told me that, we give them an investor report every quarter. I said, wonderful. That's what we'll do. 30 to 55-year-olds are interested in return on investment, or essentially both their time and their money, because they have a very limited schedule. So our 4-week assessment is based off of that brand promise that we're going to deliver to them. Here's your ROI. Let's show you every 4 weeks. And then we that's kind of one of the systems that we implement. And so our marketing strategy, our marketing system is based off of delivering people into that framework. You go to our website, you schedule an initial consultation. It schedules with us automatically. The person scheduling the consultation gets notified. We get notified. It pops up into the calendar. They get reminders about it. We show up on the initial consultation. We have it on Zoom, and then we say, "Hey, look, okay, now it's time to sign up for our low barrier offer, which is our Kickstarter." They sign up for our Kickstarter program, and then we say, when you first come in, you're going to get an initial assessment. So from the very first time they come in, they are being indoctrinated into our systems that back up that brand promise. So they know that, okay, I'm going to get this initial assessment on the very first session because they're treating me like a member. And then we're going to say, hey, every 4 weeks, you're going to get assessed. So in order for them to get that 4-week assessment, they have to become a member first. So once you get to the 4 weeks, then they have their second assessment, and we kind of keep rolling at it like that. So if you're a business owner just starting, really, you have to look at what you're promising the public and then build systems that reinforce that promise. So whatever that is, and then look at what you do on a daily basis. How do you service your clients on a daily basis? You may have to write it down. Write down everything you do, from turning on the light switch in the morning to turning it off at night, and everything in between. And then see which activities of those in between those light switch flicks actually deliver on the promise, and then eliminate the ones that are time wasters and keep the ones that deliver that brand promise.
That's very strategic, and it makes sense as you're going through that process. You're essentially creating your offer.
Yeah.
Right. You're essentially creating your offer, and then you can create an offer that's very clear and concise. That's how you make a good offer, and that's how you get people to, for lack of a better term, this is very Alex Hormozy, but like, make them feel dumb for saying no.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because that's true. Most people who are new in business come up with their offers based off of how they see their competitors offering a service.
Yep.
It's okay. Well, you are, let's say, 30 days for $89, and I'll be 30 days for $79, just because I want people to come in and test me out. Well, guess what? Your unit economics in your personal training studio may not be able to deliver 30 days for $79. Because when you divide those 12 sessions that you're going to give for $79, you're making nothing. Yet you have to run and operate your facility. So how in the world can you deliver on that? It's a silly thing. And it sets you back and it extends your sales cycle. And those are mistakes that I made. When you're in personal training, you have to show the personal piece and the training piece. That's it. You don't have to be all things to all people. You have to show them how you're going to be personal to them. You have to show them how you're going to train them. And if you can provide them with the roadmap, one of the things we do is we roadmap people when they come in. We don't just say, here's what you can expect. No. We say we ask them what their goals are. And then we literally have a sheet called the roadmap where we say, here's your goals. Here are our goals for you. Here's how much time in 3 months what we think you can accomplish. In 6 months, what we think you can accomplish. In 9 months, what we think you can accomplish. And by doing these things and coming in this amount per week, XYZ, and we have trainers notes on there. That's how you get a person to believe it's personal and it's training. And then just because you're coming in on a low barrier offer, it doesn't mean that you can't charge a reasonable rate for their attendance at your facility because it's still costing you money. We have 3 sessions for $99. It's $33 a session. Our sessions are 45 minutes. That's a real rate for somebody else. But you also have to marry your concept to your low barrier offer in the sense that you can't ask someone to spend $5 a session on a 30-day offer and then upsell them into a personal training program that costs $60 a session. Like to go from 5 to 60, that's a huge take. Our sessions go from 40 to 49. So to go from 33 to 49 if they only come in once a week, or to go to 40 it's not a big jump. But to go from $10 a session to 80 or whatever the case is a massive jump for somebody.
Yep.
And not everyone's ready for that.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot that goes into strategically setting up the beginning of this business. And I think you're right. A lot of people, they either develop their pricing strategy and their offers based on what their competition is doing. And when it comes down to it, a lot of times you have it's very rare that you're going to enter into a business where you don't have any competition. Mm-hmm. And in most businesses, your competition is doing exactly what you're doing. They're just calling it something different. Their offer is built a little bit different. They have some sort of different strategy, but when it comes down to it, especially when it comes to health and fitness, everyone pretty much does the same thing. We target different demographics. And so what would your recommendations be for people who are starting their business and trying to identify where they fit in the market and how they can structure their offer? I know you mentioned that like a lot of times we structure our offers based on what our competitors are doing. What are the things, I know you mentioned like how you're going to deliver value. What are some other things that people can think about to really create a solid offer?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I think there's a lot that goes into this. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I don't think of anything in terms
Bring
of
it on, man. Let's go.
simple solutions, I guess. But I think so. Let's talk about something first, right? Let's talk about competition. We see that as a bad thing. This is a part of the logical fallacy, in my opinion, in the fitness industry. Okay, boxing gym opens up down the street, right? A HIIT concept opens up around the corner. You have 2 personal training concepts in one area, and you have a health club down, about half mile away. So there's 2 ways to think about market and competitiveness. The first way to think about it is that there's so much competition here, it doesn't make sense for me to open here. Another way to think about it is that you go ahead and put personal training in the area where nobody knows what personal training is. How do you know your business is going to be successful? Mm-hmm. The idea is that I'm just going to put a personal training area, a personal training studio or a HIIT studio, large group training studio, a team training studio in an area where there isn't one. How do you know that the market sophistication is going to be there to even get people to engage with your business? So what Amazon did was Amazon made so many e-commerce millionaires that would never have otherwise been made because they validated the space. So when there's more fitness concepts in an area, essentially what you do is you validate the space for fitness in that market. Now, the consumer may be used to one certain kind of piece of fitness, but that might make them more likely to try something else because they've already laid the foundation with another concept. And now you can take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to like, I think, locating, and we're getting into the offer in a minute, to doing this, I think we have competition completely wrong in the fitness industry. And it stems from, I don't know how long you all have been in the fitness industry. I've been 2 decades for me.
Yeah. I mean, I've been training for about a decade.
Yeah. Yep. So, like back in the day, it was all like competition in the big box gym. If you work in the big box gym, 20 trainers on staff. It's like you eat what you kill, but a lot of dudes there, testosterone raging. So you want your clients and, don't touch my clients and they're my clients and blah, blah, blah. And that attitude in some respects has leached out into like where we are now with boutique fitness and opening up private studios, where it's like, I own push-ups. And it's like, you don't own push-ups. You never have.
We see that on the internet. Yeah. That's all over Instagram too. It's like, this guy invented that exercise. No, this guy did. Dude, no one did. Like, yeah.
No one did. The first personal training studio was opened in Germany in the late 1800s. Okay. So don't give me that you invented exercise. He had dumbbells. All right. So let's not even go there. So when compiling an offer, you need to look at how much you charge regularly, right? So, okay, let's say you're a team training studio or a concept or a HIT concept that has 15 to 20 people in the session, and which means that your membership rate is probably going to be somewhere between $115 and $175 to $180 a month, right? Fair enough, to be fair. You want to have an offer that is, number one, not too far away from what the regularly priced membership is going to be. So you want to consider that. And number two, you should consider what the value is of the offering or what the person's going to get when they come in and actually, and deal with you. Like, as an example, test drives for cars are free normally, but if we had to pay $100 to do them, we would pay it, because number one, getting a car is valuable. And number two, like, okay, I'm going to go test drive if you walked into Porsche or Mercedes and they charge you $200 to test drive a car before you bought it, you'd pay it. You just would. Why? Well, because your first answer would be like, it's a Porsche. What's a Mercedes? Of course, $200 is nothing compared to what the cost of the car is. Why? Because in your mind, the value is there. The perceived value already of what you're getting is there. So in order for you as a fitness professional to come up with an offer that actually makes sense, you have to look at what you're going to charge, look at what you offer. Are you giving them a free t-shirt and a free dot fit supplements when they first come in? Are you giving them, swag? Are you giving them a meal plan? Are you giving them all this stuff just to come in? That has a cost associated with it. Why lose money from the beginning? You have costs associated with the person delivering that offering. Now, I'm not saying that you need to make all the money in the world, but you should recoup your costs on the time for them coming in. My goodness, if we could start treating the fitness profession like an actual profession, we would make professional money, and there wouldn't be an 81% turnover rate in the fitness industry like there is right now.
Yeah, it gets pretty wild.
Yeah, so your low barrier offer needs to be kind of close to what your regular membership price is, but far enough for a person to be tempted by the structure of what you're offering. Team training, I tend to think that 14 days is a good amount of time, and probably anywhere between $49 to $89, depending on what market you're in for those 14 days. Personal training, I tend to like a prescriptive amount as a custom offer. So for instance, we're 3 sessions for $99, averages out to $33 a session. The average price of personal training in the US is between $40 and $70 a session. I think $33 is more than reasonable to ask for you to have time with a personal trainer to try to figure out if it's what you want. And then in an environment where it's large team training model, where you have like 30 people in a session, and so your per hour operational cost are much lower because you have so many people in there, then you can go to a 30-day offering of something approximating $89 to $99 for 30 days, or even like $50 for 30 days, because you can offset that cost with the amount of people that are in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and things to think about when you're creating that offer, and especially how you're going to deliver on it, what you're going to include, and how you're going to fulfill it. So you mentioned things like, do they get a t-shirt? Do they get a nutrition plan? Like, do they get swag? What do they get? And what are the wins that they achieve along the way? And that's why I like your assessments every month is like, and your timeline that you lay out is, here's what we expect. Here's the win that you will achieve in the first 3 months. Here's the win that you will achieve in the first 6 months and 9 months, 12 months, whatever it is. That lays it out. That creates certainty. And when people want to buy something, specifically personal training, they want certainty. They've tried everything else in the world. Nothing's worked. This creates a little bit more certainty, and that makes them more inclined to buy it. That makes them more inclined to pay a higher ticket.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, like, we lose sophistication. So I've been in the industry for 2 decades. You've been in the industry for a decade. We lose a little bit of that sophistication when it comes to what people who don't know much about exercise really are looking for, or really what they want, the further we move away from it. How do you know they want a t-shirt? So would they trade a t-shirt for a roadmap? Probably. I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So a t-shirt then. It's like, okay, right? Or you can say, you can use that time professionally. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving away swag. But information is where the money is nowadays, right? People don't know how to get started. How much better would it be to spend your time to tell them, when you leave here, you're going to have a roadmap about where you can go. You will know tomorrow, based off of our suggestions in our meeting today, what you need to do to get started. And you're going to be fully aware of the tools that we have here to help you achieve those goals. So I just happen to believe that roadmaps are more important than swag at the beginning. No one really asked for one. I think that swag is great when they sign up, but when they're first coming in, educate them. If you act like a professional, they'll treat you like one, and they won't complain about the price.
Yeah. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about, I know you're franchising MELD Fitness. And so obviously scalability is something that you have in mind, and not only scalability in building up and creating more locations, but also just building up and scaling within your own business at one location. I think that something that's challenging for a lot of new entrepreneurs is, once we start hiring new individuals, we start replacing people to perform our jobs that, we want to create more of that, just a more refined position for ourselves. And so we hire people on to do things, and creating standard operating procedures and like teaching people how to fulfill what we're asking. What tips do you have for new entrepreneurs on how to scale their business and actually lead from the front?
Yeah. And I'm glad you said lead from the front, because I've heard this term servant leadership, and I don't really like it. I'm not a big fan of servant leadership, and I know some people are. I think that leaders lead. They just do. And they reach back to bring people up with them. I don't think they go back, and then maybe it's required, but they don't always, go back there. Well, let me get in the mud to show you how much of a leader I am. Mm-hmm. No, lead your team, lead your people, lead your company. And as you're doing that, you bring people along with you. So with that being said, my strategy is to create a bullpen. I hire for the future, with the future in mind. So one of my things is, you talk about scaling. It's like, okay, what do I anticipate some of my needs are? And if I bring somebody in, one of the biggest reasons for the 81% turnover, I think, in the fitness industry, is that people have no idea what comes next. It's like, okay, well, I'm a training client, or I'm an independent trainer, and I'm going to leave because I don't have a career path. It's just counting reps for the rest of my life. It's, you can go get a mirror and have the mirror thing do that.
The total thing.
Yeah, exactly. But like, if you're a trainer, how do I progress into being like a better at business? How do I understand business? So what we have this massive vacuum of like independent coaches going out there starting their own thing, which is great, but then failing at a higher rate. Their studio's not successful. They're not making money. But guess what? If I groomed you within my business to be able to, in my case, buy a franchise and operate one on your own, because I brought you in with the future in mind, you're learning legitimate skills to be able to actually leverage into making money and building wealth for yourself. And I think that a lot of owners you talk about leading from the front, part of that is being able to see around the corner. I know that like I like to think about building a team like a farm system in baseball, right? It's like, okay, well, I know I have we have a program designer for the business who writes the program. That program gets pushed out to franchisees, right? So they know exactly what to do. It's based off of science. I know exactly who I hired to do it. Like it's consistent, it works, and it's customizable on the ground so that personal training feel is still there, right? But if this person leaves, right, who will replace them? That program still needs to be designed by someone. And by, for instance, having someone in mind that you hire to maybe go into that position or add that position to what they're doing, then what you're doing is you are giving a person an opportunity to grow within your business. Without growth, we die. And the 81% turnover rate reflects that. Like, what is the growth if you're a trainer, if you're an independent trainer in a big box club? Making $100,000 is great as an individual. Like you can go on vacations, 2-3 vacations a year, you got a good schedule, but it's boring after a while. Like you want to do something else. You're impacting people's life. You've been a trainer for 10 years. I've been training for 2 decades. How many hundreds of people have told you that you've changed their lives?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's like, I hate to say that that's boring. I don't want to minimize that because that's a really important part of being a coach.
Oh, it's very fulfilling. Yeah.
But at some point, you've heard it a lot, right? It's like doctors seeing butts. They're not turned on by a butt. They've seen them every day, right? It's like you're not affected as the same way. So you want to challenge yourself. You get dull, it kind of gets maybe dull. I'm being a little aggressive with my wording, but it's all right. Being a little careless, but it gets a little dull, I think, like over time. And it's fun and it's flattering for someone to say that to you. But what you really want to do is you really want to grow. Is what I'm saying. Is my point. Like you want to get to the next level of whatever that means for you. Are you an intellectual? Have you even pushed the bounds of your exploration about life, about what you want to do? Like you should push it, right? That takes grooming, someone to tell you that. Like I didn't know I was as smart as you're saying I am. Maybe I should push myself, right? That's how you scale your team. You scale them by appealing to them, to the other parts of them that are different than everyone else who just offers you a training job part-time with nothing else to do. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that as we're talking about like changing people's lives and creating a positive impact, as a business owner, I also want to create a positive impact for my employees, for the people that work for me. And I want us all to rise together. The more lives we can change, the more our impact grows, the more we all grow and the more opportunities we all have. So that's something to keep in mind. But, your note on always seeing around the corner resonates with me because I remember when I first started looking for additional coaches to hire, I was so burnt out myself because I waited too long, because I wasn't looking around the corner, because I was just coaching, because it was just me. And I was working in the business. I was the head coach. I was the only coach. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, if I want to keep growing, like I'm going to need help. I need an assistant coach. And I remember hiring my first one and this massive wave of relief came over me because I finally had someone to help. And that meant that I could direct much more of my attention towards doing the things that are going to help the business grow, which, moving back to impacting people's lives allows me to increase my impact. Yeah. That's all I really want is more impact.
Yeah. And so we talk about systematizing. That's one of the ways to do it. Like if you want to scale, it's like, okay, so at what point am I going to hire a new coach? Talk about seeing around the corner. Okay. So when this coach is 70% full, so when their schedule has reached 70% utilization, that triggers an ad for to hire someone next. Yeah, That's right.
Yeah. And you should have them picked out before you need them. I think that's the most important part.
Always be interviewing. So even if you don't hire, you're absolutely right. You should always have that. Never take that job posting down. It should be part of your marketing budget, and just always be interviewing people because you never know when you're going to need to pull them in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And oh man, I had something else that I wanted to ask you. It was regarding that. It's going to come back to me though. But I think one of the last things that I wanted to talk to you about that I think would be valuable for a lot of our listeners and ourselves is, reasons why I think that everyone's always afraid of failure, right? Like that's our thing is we're afraid we're going to fail. That's why we don't do things. So in order to prepare for that, and increase our chances of success, what do you see as the most common reasons why businesses fail? Either they never get off the ground, or I think there's a statistic about businesses failing within the first 5 years. In your opinion, why is that?
Well, it's a multivariant problem in my opinion. It's not just one problem. The problem is, the one thing is that people don't understand finances and budgets, and marketing budgets are really important, and it's the first thing people cut when things happen. Why? Mm-hmm. It's your lifeline. It should be something that you double down on. People are afraid of failure. I would rather go broke trying something that doesn't work. We live in an age right now where you can get like a job on the internet and make money doing that, right? And like you can get jobs doing so many different things. So you fail. So what? For the rest of your life, you can tell people that you did everything you could to do something different than 95% of people. And if you fail doing that, why would you ever be sad about that? I remember the recently retired Thomas Plummer, business coach to the fitness industry for 40 years, said in one of his talks that I attended in Chicago back in 2019, that if you fail massively. Don't fail just a little bit. Fail big, because you went all out to try to see if this is going to work, if this is something that is viable, right? Why in the world would I get into franchising? Why? I have no idea. Josh, Travis, why? Why would I get into franchising? I was born in the city. I had no business mentors, the poorest neighborhood in Boston. There's no reason why I would now have created a concept that I can scale across the country. Why? Well, it's because right now I have worked tirelessly, flown across the country like yourself to many conferences, learning from people who I respect to put these things into practice, and have doubled down on the fact that I have created something that actually works locally and that can work nationally. And so for me, I think that what people miss and why businesses fail is because they are so scared to get beyond their comfort zone and to push beyond what they think is reasonable. And whatever you think your limits are, you can go so much farther beyond them. The limits are only explored at the fringes. So if you never really touch the fringes of what your limits are, they're not even close to exploring your limits. Limits are the edge, right? When I think about limit, I think about the edge of space. I think about flying to the moon. I think somebody had to do it. Like someone had to get in that rocket, knowing that thing could blow up on them, and it did several times. They could risk their lives. They didn't know if the oxygen was going to last to the moon, to the thing and back. It was all math. It was all on paper, but someone had to do it. But the first person that did it became the first person on the moon. And no one has ever forgotten who that is. For the rest of time, we will know who was the first person to step on the moon, because they went beyond their limits. What was the limit? Well, at the time, it was however high an airplane could fly. That was about the limit. Now we're going to another solid mass in space, right? So this is kind of what we have to do as business owners, is we have to think beyond our uncomfortability and keep pushing. When I said that people don't understand marketing budgets, it's because people either spend too much, they spend too little, or they try to stretch the marketing budget they have to fit a square peg in a round hole, and they don't know. And so they end up trying things that don't work. They don't reassess their marketing. They don't look to see what areas of the marketing are working. They don't get granular. When you're a business owner, no one is coming to save you. It is your business. No one's going to tell you how to run it. People are just going to follow along with what they think that you are offering them. You need to realize that you are the person who's going to save your business. You're the person who the business is going to fail with. So guess what? I'm flying the plane. I don't know how to fly a plane, but if both pilots had a heart attack, I get on that radio and I am perfectly fine with dying trying to land that plane. That's how I work. Michael Jordan, give me the ball. There was I just watched a video. Michael Jordan was leaving the hotel, and they asked him, Ahmad Rashad, back when he was the sports reporter. He goes, "So Mike, who's taking the last shot?" And he goes, "Me." What are you, stupid? Like, it's not even a question. in his mind? Who was taking the last shot? As a business owner, the buck stops with you. And the failure rate comes from maybe we feel like we're not worthy doing it. Maybe we feel like I don't know enough. You don't know enough. So let's be honest. You don't know enough. You're ignorant and you have no idea what you're doing. So what? Get educated, get online, read a book, talk to people who know more than you. There's a solution to all that stuff. You just have to put the effort out there, and you will. One of my favorite quotes is from one of the most unappreciated Black economists, who I think is one of the most brilliant Black economists. One of the most brilliant economists that's ever walked the face of the earth. Thomas Sowell. He's 90 years old right now. He said, "It takes an immense amount of knowledge to understand the extent of your own ignorance." Mm-hmm. To me, this is what business owners lack when they fail. They don't have the knowledge. They don't even know what they should know to ask a question about what they need to know. So that's like a four levels deep ignorance right there. And to be afraid to ask a question, or to not work hard enough, or to not think that you need to push beyond work. Okay, so you want to start a business? No one's born starting a business. Like, it's not just indelibly written in our DNA that we're going to be good at business. Guess what? All these people who talk about these, oh, you're a product of your father because your father started a business and he passed it down to you. Guess what? Almost all second generation businesses fail, just like startup businesses. You are not your dad or your mom, whoever started that business. So you have to become unignorant. Knowledgeable is probably the right way to say that. You have to become knowledgeable, understand enough to start asking questions. I mean, really, that's kind of where you start. It's like, read the E-Myth, read the E-Myth, read Clockwork, Built to Last, talk to someone. You all have this podcast to listen to. There are millions of podcasts, people like me telling you kind of like, where to go, that kind of thing. That's why businesses fail. Businesses fail because of ignorance, effort, and people being scared to push themselves. And I guess the last one is that, other people are just not honest with them. Don't go to your friends and your family and ask, what do you think about this idea? Because they're going to be like, you're cute and everything you do is good. It's like, go to someone like Josh and be like, Josh, what do you think about this idea? And he's going to be like, yeah. So I respect you, but that idea is terrible. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's not about you. It's just the idea. I don't think,
Yeah.
But it's good. That's a good point, is that, like, I think everybody needs to know who they can go to with those questions. I think everyone needs to know, to have people in their circle that they can ask those questions to and expect honest, as hard as it may be, as painful as it may be to hear, honest, real answers, and to have people who call them on their shit. Because we get caught up in our own shit. And like you said, we get stuck in one way. There's a reason why, when we truly want knowledge, when you want real knowledge, you learn something and then you try to prove it wrong. You learn things that go directly against your line of thinking to see if you still agree with what you believe. And if you don't have people in your corner or in your circle who are going to challenge you like that, then you're going to be comfortable. And if you're comfortable, you're not going to grow. So I think having people, either like you mentioned, on podcasts, books that you read, business mentors, friends, business partners, or colleagues, or even people that you hire on. This is one of my favorite things about some of the people that I've recently brought onto my team, is they come with their own ideas and they give their input and they'll give their advice, and it's honest. It's brutal sometimes, but it's what I need to hear, because it keeps me uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, I know I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm growing. I know I'm making an impact. I'm making a change. And so there's a ton of different ways where you can gain access to these people, yourself included. But I think that's a really important part of any entrepreneurial journey, is like, you can't do it alone. Even though it is entrepreneurship, a lot of times it's solopreneurship. You can't do it alone. You need to have those people in your corner.
Yeah. All your coaches have coaches. So, okay, Jeff Bezos has everything figured out, right? No, he still is meeting with people who are smarter than him. Elon Musk has everything figured out. Just bought Twitter. Good for him. And, no, he still has people he talks to as well. Even though he's brilliant, right? Like, don't be fooled into thinking that these guys and these women are doing it on their own without anybody else there. Don't be so lacking so much self-awareness. I would say that to think that you can do it on your own without any help. Yeah. I think it's absurd, right? Jordan didn't become Jordan literally until he started lifting weights. If you saw The Last Dance, he talks about it, right? Yeah. That, and we can have a whole nother podcast just about lifting, right? And why everyone should be doing it and why it improves every activity of life. But he had most of the skills, almost all the skills that he needed pre-lifting Jordan. He went into Jordan. He met Tim Grover. He started lifting, and he became a phenomenon after that. Like, it was literally the lifting that was a catalyst to changing his career, which I find remarkable. But like, you can't do it on your own. If you could do it on your own, then there would be a lot more millionaires out there than there actually are. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who have really good ideas that have never gained any traction because they haven't talked to the right people. Yep. Instead of focusing on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. I mean, honestly, I hate the platitudes because it makes me sound stupid, but like, honestly, what are you going to do? You can't, if you can't, negative actions or negative thoughts, get fixed with positive action. That's the only thing. That's the only way it works.
And you're right. The platitudes, they sound ridiculous sometimes, but at the same time, like, we know this from training, we know this from coaching, and I've learned this from my business mentors. And this is like pretty commonly known across the board. Like, most of us know what we need to do. When it comes down to it, most of us know what we need to do, but we don't do it. So we need to be reminded a lot. And those platitudes, sometimes they sound silly, but like, oh yeah, no, can't control that. Duh. Like, maybe I shouldn't focus on it. And so we need to be reminded. So I think that that's a great sort of ending to kind of what we talked about today. And we got deep. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. So I appreciate you sharing your knowledge.
Hell yeah.
This has been very beneficial. I came into this and I was like, okay, cool. We're going to talk about fitness. This is going to be great. And then instantly I was like, no, I'm fascinated. We're switching gears here. Like, I want to learn from this guy. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. And before we take off, I'd love you to just leave our listeners with just a last piece of advice. And I know they're going to want to follow you. So if you can give yourself the plug, tell them where they can learn more about you, follow you on Instagram, learn about MELD Fitness and HushFrame, and give yourself the plug.
So I think my last piece of advice is that not everyone should be an entrepreneur, and that's going to sting. I think that in order for you to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a person who understands that answers to your fundamental questions need to be sought, and you have to be willing to go after them, and nobody owes you anything because the world is going to be looking to you. If you go out there in business, the world's going to be looking to you to provide an answer, because that's your brand promise, is the answer to a question that's out there. But how do I do this? Or how do I get there? Or what's going to solve this problem? And you're the answer as an entrepreneur. So you have to be the one that asks the questions. You kind of have to, but to get to the place where you can ask questions, you have to get yourself educated. You have to understand the things that you don't know. So I want to start a business because I have a good idea. Not good enough. I want to start a business because I hate my boss. Worse than not good enough. I want to start a business because my boss does it. I'm smarter than him. I can do it. Definitely not good enough. Like, those are terrible reasons to start a business. You should start a business because you understand its power historically in creating generational wealth. And as a tool, you're going to learn what goes into creating generational wealth and what you need to do to position yourself to do so. And number two, your idea is not that it's been taken in the marketplace, but you can take one and make it better. You can refine it and turn it into something that actually works, right? And so that's my advice. It's like, don't be afraid to not know, just to not know. It's okay. I grew up in the poorest part of the city. I'm running a franchising business and the CEO of a soundproofing company. Like, honestly, like, it's weird. Doesn't even make sense. But the reason why I'm here is because I embarked on a learning learning trajectory that has brought me here, and I'm still learning. I learn from you guys. I ask people questions. I'm unafraid. Every time I train someone who is worth millions of dollars, I ask them something.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. And I write it down. I would go to fitness conferences. I would attend the business summits, like the business pieces of those conferences. And then instead of going out drinking with all the rest of the fitness pros, I would go back to my hotel room with my notebook, sit in there and just write out my thoughts about everything that I learned that day. I have stacks of books of stuff that I would just write out. And I would plan, like, how does this stuff apply to my business? Like, I took the time and I sacrificed, in some cases, the opportunity to have relationships with people around the country because I was going through these conferences for an opportunity to enhance my business, to create systems and processes and learn that. Take advantage of your opportunity. If you want to find me, I don't know why you would. I mean, you can if you want, but if you want to find me, on Instagram, it's at Micah Logan 1. So my first name, MICAH LOGAN, the number 1. That's Instagram. And then I have a website, so it's micah-logan.com. MELD franchise, MELD franchise.com, or you can go to HushFrame, exactly how it sounds.com.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. And I think those are great last words. As you know, started off harsh, but dude, if you can't handle that, then maybe entrepreneurship isn't your thing. If you can't handle a little bit of harsh reality. So I appreciate the realness that you brought to this podcast. And I highly recommend everybody go check out Micah. For those interested, I know we do have some people who are in, the construction space, our friend Christian and some others who listen to the podcast. If you guys are interested in HushFrame, check it out. I don't know if you guys are watching this on the YouTube, but it looks so simple and so easy. And so, this is definitely like a game-changing piece of equipment for a lot of construction pieces. And I hope you guys learned a lot today, because I did. I kind of selfishly took over this podcast because I wanted to learn, and that happens a lot. But
I learned a lot today.
Yeah, I think that kind of happens a lot. Is we have plans and then we come in and we're like, okay, no, we want to learn, but our listeners learn too. So I hope this was valuable.
The last thing that you said there, you have to always be learning and you can't do it yourself. That's the most powerful thing about having a podcast is like, we put people on the schedule and now we can't you can't cancel on too many people. You've got people every week coming in who know more than us about certain things. We get to talk to them, learn from them, build those networks. Like, that's the most powerful thing about having a podcast, I think.
Yeah. Talking about like constantly be learning. This podcast has given us the opportunity to connect with people that we never would have connected with normally. And it doesn't take anything for us to do, really. We just get to have really meaningful, deep, vulnerable, and intelligent conversations with people who are smarter than us, who are further along in business, who are further along in fitness, who are further along in their mental health journey, whatever it is. And we get to learn. So every now and then, we'll just hijack the episode and, want to learn for ourselves. And I think it comes through to our listeners. So to our listeners, I hope that this was valuable. I hope you appreciate it. And thank you again, Micah, for coming on and just sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you all for tuning into another episode of the Struggle to Strength podcast. We will see y'all next week.